the line drawing while it's wet. And I just start putting in big patches of flats, or flats with a little bit of modeling, a little bit of light and dark. So this is just a big basket, and it's just a flat shape. The tree is mostly just a flat brown, lots of flat coloring, a little bit of light to dark. The owl's body here is just flat. Once I did the next layer, I do all my paintings in 2 layers usually, and then a 3rd layer isn't really a layer, it's just areas where I want to, you never say I'm going to fix something, just so you know, you're never fixing anything, you're always just taking it to the next level, or the next step, or the next phase. And when I teach a class, a lot of people say, oh, I got to fix this, I got to fix that. I always just say, no, it's the next decision. You have something to work from, and it's like making a soup. You don't fix your soup, you spice it a bit, or enhance it a bit, or tweak it a bit, right? So this was all just flats. This is blue sky. Just use it doesn't matter what color you use in your underlayer, because your overlayer you can adjust, warm things off, cool them up, lighten them, darken them. It's always just good to have, for me, a big flat fill-in to work over top of.
So is that what you mean by 2 steps or whatever? Is one, you cover the whole canvas?
I basically fill this whole canvas, the flat, just the drawing, shapes. Shape's the most important thing, I think. I don't know if you know who Ingres. He did the Odalisque, the long Odalisque painting, but he said drawing is 90% of painting. So if you like your shapes, usually it doesn't matter where your light source is or what kind of coloring you put on or texturing. If your shapes are good, then you're free to go with the paintings. So a shape to me is really important. So this is flats. This is the whole painting done in pretty much flats. And I also think a little bit of light to dark. I feel like I'm doing Braille. I'm doing the sign language for my talk here. So I think of the simple light source. I always choose a directional light or a soft light, or if I have a hard light, I block in big areas of light and dark. So with the dress, I have a big flat blue in the light. I think of the light source, so the underside would be a darker patch. Same thing with the flesh. I just do a light and a dark. And then I always try and keep my drawing with the darkest refined lines. They're called like proximity shadows, where things touch. I always try and make sure I enhance those so I don't lose my drawing. I don't want to lose the shape of the drawing. So in the finger, I might go in a little darker and draw things in. So here was the basket. The first layer was flat, and I probably painted right into a wet film. And then I just started thinking about where my light source is. So I was just dabbing over top of an umber, darker umber. I just took white and umber and did a slight consideration of the lights. So the light source is coming down from the front. When I did a lot of drawing in college to learn how to draw, because I couldn't draw, and we did a lot of Conte drawings. So you're thinking of the light and dark and the big simple lights and darks. So a lot of people, when they draw hair, they draw like every little hair. I had a teacher that said just do patches. Just do like a patch of light, a patch of dark, and then a few strands will give it life. You don't need to figure out every little detail. So like if I look in the room, everybody's got a different hair shape. There's a C, there's 2 sort of teardrops or almond shapes on your hair. Your hair is more curved. So every time you look at something, you just try and find the simplest shape, the simplest light patch, dark patch, and then you work into those to get the detail, I guess, or the texture or the volume. So the highlights go on at the end. They don't, people want to, or the darkest parts, you don't have to go in and push the darkest darks. Those can stay until the end. So if you're getting the big tone of hair, and then you just go in and push the deepest recesses, it holds things in the darkness. Oops. So that's a thumbnail sketch. It was probably 2 by 3 inches. With a bit of pastel rubbed on paper. That was just sitting there, okay, rose-colored glasses. I thought it'd be neat to do a dark, or like a weird, ugly gray background, and then just have these glasses showing the colors of the rainbow. So that little sketch turned into quite a big painting. And I actually just put the drawing right on the projector. This is about 2 years ago, and just traced the shapes. And then I looked at it, I think I need this to be a little smaller, so I gave it a little more room in the background and made actually started this painting twice. Even though it's the simplest idea and the simplest shapes, I washed it off and gave it.
Do you have a picture of the original?
It might be on here somewhere. Yeah. I'll just show you one more. I could go onto my website. I just put these all on the iPad today, so no. That would have fit in the car, that one too. I still have it. Okay, I'll show you one more progression of a painting, and then I'll show you some painting techniques. So here's drawing, pig drawing. I just take shots with my phone. I always like to try and capture because I get anxious, like, how did I do that? I want to remember how I did things. And I used to be really anxious that I would never be able to paint again. I don't know if you guys are like that, where you feel like, this is a... So I always like to have a photograph of the progression so I can go, okay, it's a process. If you're spending a month on something, you can start getting anxious if you're not seeing results. So I always like to have a sort of progression shots to remind me, right, it's a process, stay calm, don't get panicky.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it just kind of comforts me. I don't know if anybody else has that same inner anxiety. So this was drawing fine charcoal. You can see the lighter lines. I don't know if you can see them there, but these are what I call searching lines. And then the darker line establishes where I actually really want it. So I don't even actually get it right. The drawing doesn't have to be right in the way I paint right off the bat. It allows me to change things all the way through. So that's the drawing. And this is kind of, I don't know why I did the hand so little, but I wanted the one hand coming forward, so I guess I made this hand bigger. The idea behind this was I did a painting called Hope and Punches, and this one's called Hope and Salvation. And I think in our day and age, everyone's always talking about retirement, savings, money, worried about money. And so everyone thinks if they just have that extra little bit, they're going to be okay. Like somehow money has replaced religion in terms of comfort. So this is where the idea came from. I just thought it'd be cool to paint stained glass, and it'd be so neat to see a pink pig. And I like some of the reds that I'm using. I like Perylene red and cadmium red, and I like trying to play with different tints. Perylene red's one of my, other than the Indian yellow and ultramarine blue, they're my three favorite colors. So I like playing with Perylene red and trying to get these rich, warm patches. I thought it'd be nice to see on the wall. So this idea kind of came about. On the nickel, I actually have In God We Trust on the nickel. It's kind of like money and God have become one. So it's kind of fun. And I don't always paint detail. People always say, oh, your stuff is really detailed, but I'm always thinking about the big patches before I think about the detail. Then when I get to the little things, like, oh, I can have fun with this and get in there and adjust and tweak things. So this is a painting now with the first layer of paint on it in the bottom half. And that quarter is just a flat gray. That's just a flat patch of gray that I then let dry, and then the next layer I did my lights and darks and details, and then I might have gone in and just glazed in the shadow, like where the finger touches the thing. So you can see the brass candle holder is pretty flat. There's a little suggestion of light. This whole thing, the stained glass, was all done in the second layer, but all the edges, everything looked cut out and jumping, and it didn't hold back. The pattern didn't hold back. It was like coming forward and really annoying visually to me, and took away from everything else. So I actually went around every pane of glass and mixed the color in between the black or blue and the yellow, and then the green and the black. And every edge of that stained glass window has a fine sort of tone that's in between the color of the window and the color of the pane, or the color of the frame of that color. Just holds everything down. It took away I had to get rid of all the sharp edges, because when you first paint, everything just jumps. So doing the stained glass, the edges took as long as painting everything else on it.
So is that like the equivalent of the leading, like in the same, or something in addition to that?
It's taking two things that are sharp edged, and then just by going with the color right on that edge that's in between the two colors, it holds the two colors together. It sort of softens it, diffuses it, and then they didn't look as cut out. So just little things people don't notice when they look at it. Oh, that's cool, and they don't realize it can take days or a day or 2 days just to make the smallest change on something.
That's.
So the table was just done with a rough shadow.
It looks like a mouse's tail. Is it
It's just a funny little.
It just
I just have fun. I don't get all uptight about things being perfect. I do and I don't. There's like the right time for me to do that, and it's just a silly fun
How long do you wait in between your layers?
Usually about a week and a half.
So you're not blending the layers together then?
If sometimes most things are done in 2 layers. So I always have it flat. I usually wait a week. I have often 2 paintings going at once. But if you're doing something that takes you a few weeks, you can have the rough in done. And if I always using the brown in with my whites for the first layer, helps paint dry. So sometimes you can overpaint within a few days, or a couple days. So I could get this whole underpainting done, and then with that'll probably take me 3 days on this, and then I can go back in and start in the areas that I feel are dry enough to work. And I work in sections, as you can see here. I have a lot of white, and I've got this. I will finish each section patched in. I won't try and complete any layer until my first layer. I want to have color on everything before I start finalizing something, second layers.
Do you take care to do all the fallow green and oiling in and all that?
Yeah, so my first layer is umber with just a bit of mineral spirits, and this is almost like a wash. It's not a paint film per se. It's just a thin wash. So that I could paint on that pretty much the next day or even that day. Umber dries really fast, so if I put Indian yellow on here, it'd take a week or 2 to dry. If I use umber, it's sometimes you can put paint on the palette in the morning, and by mid-afternoon the brown's all stiff and can't move it around. So people think they need to add oil to get it liquefied. I just scrape it off and start with a new patch of brown. I don't like to re-liquefy something once it's starting to change. Oil paint, you want to, it's not like acrylic, you can't just add water. Well, even acrylic, if you try adding oil or water, it gets kind of this weird gummy quality. So the first layer is done with, the drawing's done with, the lining is done with mineral spirits. The first layer of paint, I just use a touch of mineral spirits. I have what's called a dipper cup. Right here, this little cup. And I don't use much. A lot of people think oil paint is really toxic. I don't use much oil or much mineral spirits. I use probably 1 of these a day, maybe 2. If I do a big area 3 or 4 times, I'll fill that up. And with oil paint, the paint already has oil in it, so you don't actually have to add that much oil to an oil painting. A lot of people add too much oil and everything gets slippery and slick, and then they try and paint into this wet sort of film and their colors get muddy. I just put like a drop or 2 of oil into my paint to make it movable if I needed to do that. But the paint right out of the tube is actually pretty good for a lot of things. Or out of the tube with just a touch of mineral spirits to make it more of a cream instead of a paste. So I'll show you one more. So this is this started out as a post-it note. This is drawing on the canvas. Oh, it is backwards. It's backwards.
In the mirror, yeah.
So there's fine charcoal. The bird, everything's just roughed in. Sometimes I'll do a few chicken scratch lines for figuring out the shading. There's like no precision to the drawing at all. It's just about liking the whole placement on the whole canvas. And then I start going in with the harder charcoal and pressing and finding and refining the shapes. So that's right side or left side. In this case is roughed in, right side's more refined. And then I start putting in color. And I wanted a central light source again on this one. And just started playing with big flats or simple volumes. Everything is basically a cylinder or a ball or a sphere or a cube in space. So lighting, I find, over time became really easy to figure out. So the watermelon first layer is pretty simple. It's not even it's kind of a browny red in this piece, and that's because I add umber to make sure it dries really fast. So I'm just getting a rough tone, rough coloring, rough suggestion of light and dark. And then get more color. That, and then this is when I start making a little bit more like important decisions about how high key I want to color. Do I want this red to be the same or different? This piece I like doing this because I can play with 3 different reds. The red of the watermelon, the red of the apple. The apple was done just with brown and white, light to dark, thinking of a top light source, and then for the second layer I glazed transparent. Does everyone know what transparency is versus opaque? That's the key to getting good oil paintings. All the old master paintings have a lot of transparency over really opaque underpainting. So this is once the sky goes in, you can see how just sort of colorless the flesh is in this case. It's just an umber and white, light to dark, figuring out the tones of the flesh. And once I put the blue in, then the flesh went really dead. It actually looked a lot more, I thought it looked better without the blue sky. Then I had to balance all the other colors against that harsh blue, but I think I can't paint a sky not blue. It's a blue sky, so I had to make all the colors work. All the painting edges are usually tweaked and adjusted and softened or sometimes crisped up. If you want something to sit in front of something, you have a sharper edge. If you want them to sort of go out of focus a little bit to hold back, you soften an edge. So where the shirt met the sky here, I would do a softer edge. And where the arm sits in front, this would be a little harder edge. So it just looks a little bit more how like your eye works, finding the depth of field of things. So that's like that. Yeah, so here's the, did I show you that one? So that's the same thing, piecing in light and dark. One more. This is a sketch and it's about, I think that's an 8.5 by 11 foot piece of, or an inch piece of paper. So that sketch turned into a 5-foot painting. And I just play with it. I don't even resolve things. I just go right onto the canvas. I actually stuck 2 pieces of paper together and gave a little more room, and wanted a little bit bigger crowd on the right on this side. And then once I had that, I went to right to the canvas and I started playing with the charcoal. So you can actually see these are traced lines. If you look at an Andy Warhol drawing, you can see that he's tracing from a projection. There's a certain look to line that's kind of a confident line. Ingres, I think, did it too with a lens when he was doing some of his portraits, all the folds on the fabric. You could actually see, oh, he's not doing that freehand. He's probably done some freehand, but he's tracing line. He's not actually doing a lot of freehand. So these are kind of traced lines. And then once I have this on, I adjust it, tweak it, change things, reshape things. Like there's no finality to the drawing until I commit with the charcoal. And then I start putting on the paint. And the underpainting always looks gross. Like it always looks textured and blotchy, and I don't quite have everything resolved. So here you can see the eyes are kind of fuzzy. It's just shaping in, getting approximation of color. And like for the wine glasses, I did 2 layers so that I use I actually had to pour a glass of wine because I needed a little sample to look at. So you gotta have a little glass of wine while you're working sometimes. So this is why the first layer is flat, and then I took a picture, and I love that technology now allows us to look at photo references. So I'm so lucky. I have a friend in the studio downtown, and he paints from his phone. He takes street scenes, and then he's always zooming in, painting. So I think it's so funny the technology we have now to paint. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's cheating." I don't think it's cheating. I think if you know what you're doing, you know how to use it. You still got to get the color right. You still got to push the paint. You still got to check to see if your drawing's right. So if you use the technology, that's good. So I draw a lot. I did a lot of life drawing. I draw a lot from life. I do little funny things. It's my son at the dentist. Just have fun. So my sketch, this won't turn into anything. That's just me enjoying the process of drawing. So I like drawing from life. I always stylize. I always simplify. And then the nice thing about being an artist is when your kid goes to bed, you can paint the bottom of his skateboard that's all scratched up. And then he can wake up and go, ooh. So anyway. That's enough of this stuff, I think. It's about 3 or 4 years ago, I started to do sculpting. I told you I'd do a color demo. How much time do we have? We got lots of time, right?
We'll take our break probably about 8 o'clock, and 20 minutes, if that's good for you.
About a 15-minute break.
And then we're done at 9, like by.
So maybe I'll do the color demo after the break.
Okay,
The painting technique after the break. So I'll just talk a bit about my sculpture. It was supposed to be a demo, but the more I talk, the less I have to use that Indian yellow.
what is it you like so much about Indian yellow? I just acquired some at a really recent workshop and I haven't used it yet, really.
Yeah. So Indian yellow's yellow. If you add it to white, you get almost a cadmium yellow. If you add it to ultramarine and quinacridone magenta, which are both transparent, and you add Indian yellow, you can make the nicest, richest black. A lot of people say that like the theory is yellow, red, and blue make a dead neutral color, but it often with a cadmium yellow it goes lighter. So if you want like a really nice black and you want to control the temperature of your black, so you can make a green black, you can make a warm orange black. So you can control the temperature of your dark colors.
Just like
A
the
lot,
Indian
just
yellow.
with the Indian yellow. So yeah, if you make a deep, deep purple and you just think it's a little bit too purple, you could add black, but it kills the richness of the color.
Yeah.
So if you just add a touch of Indian yellow, you can take the edge off the purple and give it a slightly browner.
I was wondering why Indian yellow as opposed to the other yellows,
Yeah.
like that.
Indian yellow's totally transparent, so it
Ah.
doesn't add any light, it doesn't lighten the color up, and it keeps the depth of the color. And I can
Transparency,
show you a
like
little demo with this is a yellow-orange transparent color. It's the same thing, but if you're doing a rich dark green glaze, Indian yellow keeps the color really deep, really rich. So
So it's a transparency you like about it, basically.
and then it doesn't lighten the color. And so when I don't pull black out to do, like if you're doing a deep lit shadow or something, you could take a quinacridone magenta,
Yeah,
put
mix
a
your black.
touch of, a lot of people add black and it kills the warmth. But if you want to keep the warmth of the red, but you just want a little less red, then you would add a little bit Indian yellow, touch ultramarine blue, and then you've got a really nice, rich, reddish black that's not deadened by adding just Mars black or ivory black. Ivory black will keep the colors not too bad. If you add Mars black to stuff, it kills the light going through the paint, so you don't get the depth of a shadow. But the three transparent colors, ultramarine, quinacridone magenta, and Indian yellow, great. You can, if you just use those three colors and white, you don't need any other color. It's basically the most limited palette or minimal palette. People talk about not using every color of the rainbow.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy brown, you don't need to buy oranges, you don't need to buy greens. You can make them all pretty much with those three colors. You need to tweak a little bit for certain greens to get more of a limey green or
What are they again? What are the colors?
quinacridone magenta,
Acridone what?
quinacridone,
Or quinacridone?
yeah, quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, and Indian yellow. And Indian yellow used to be made out of horse pea, and it wasn't light fast, it would fade, but now they've got a chemical substitute because of industry. They've got a really good permanent Indian yellow. You can put it in tints and it won't fade. You can put it in dark colors and it won't lighten. So it's a really good color to use. So everyone who takes my class, obviously, got to have Indian yellow.
Indian yellow.
And other yellows too, but it's really good for deepening color. I'll show you one minute. About 3 or 4 years ago, we went camping, and I was kind of frustrated because of the economic downturn and whatever, and got to do something different. And I was carving a piece of wood at the campfire, and I kind of got into this whole sculpting thing, and I made a fish, and I thought it was pretty good. And so I said to my wife, you know what, I think I'm going to try some sculpting. I'd never sculpted before other than a little bit in high school, grade 8. And I remember liking it a lot when I was a kid. So I actually came back from camping, bought 4 soapstones, a grinder, chisels, hammer, all the tools, just went nuts. And my driveway was covered in soapstone powder. And I'm like, ew, this isn't good. I had to make a vacuum box, and I have a shop vac that was going constantly and sucking the dust in, so that solved the dust problem. But didn't like the fact that you couldn't add or take away. So once you carve, you carve. I think I was pretty good at it. But a friend of mine who's a jeweler said, you should get some soft clay and make some stuff out of clay. So probably 3 years ago, I guess, I started sculpting, and I've done 5 bronzes and 5 soapstones, I guess. I love sculpting in bronze. This is, you don't sculpt in bronze, you make it clay, and then you take the clay to the foundry, and there's a silicone mold made, and then from the mold they make waxes, and then those waxes get remolded into secondary molds, and then the secondary mold gets baked, and the wax melts out, and you got a hollow shell that you pour bronze into, and you have all these bronze pieces that you then weld together and put coloring on if you want. And so I just started doing this about 3. Well, the first one I finished was 2 years ago, and I just love this process. I had so much fun. It's made out of this is the actual original. I pulled it out of the box today, but this is the face. I actually screwed 2 salad bowls together and covered it in clay, and then started playing on these metal salad bowls. And it's soft clay, it never hardens. It's like plasticine. You can warm it up in the microwave. You can
you don't use the real clay, you use
So it's like a plasticine almost.
the plasticine
Yeah.
clay.
This is what they make for like movie people make prosthetics out of. They actually make facial prosthetics with this clay and then they mold it to make the rubber copies. So I
More
made it.
practical than the real thing, I would imagine.
What's that?
More practical than the
Yeah.
real clay.
Yeah, it's nice to work with. It's warm on your hands. If it hardens up a bit too much, you can, if you can fit it in the microwave and you haven't done too big, you can actually warm it up. You can texturize it, you can smooth it, you can do all sorts of things. I figured out a bunch of techniques, and thanks to YouTube, I learned how to do texturizing and detailing and stuff. So anyway, so this is what I just made. I just finished it a month and a half ago. So this is kind of my new venture. I'm actually working on trying to do a few bigger, like outdoor sculpture projects. I've done one out of mild steel a few years ago. It's in Victoria near Fisherman's Wharf. It's a big 19-foot high metal sculpture, and but it's just cut steel that's painted. This is actually like modeling clay, so you can make cool things out of it. So that's my next thing that I'm kind of working towards, is doing some bigger bronze pieces. And now with computer CNC scanning, you can take something this size and have it replicated